The people of Trinidad parade through the streets in elaborate costumes, urged on by the infectious music of the island. It is Carnival, the annual festival observed island-wide in the weeks leading up to Lent. People from all walks of life flock to Carnival, gathering in the streets for an ongoing celebration of their culture, a vibrant culture, a diverse culture, a culture of life. But in recent years, Trinidad has fallen victim to a burgeoning movement that threatens the very foundation on which the country was built. Its historically pro-life policies are weakening as the culture of death spreads its influence over the people. Indeed, all over the world, the culture of death has infiltrated pro-life countries with unprecedented vigor. And all over the world, Human Life International seeks to combat their subversive tactics. Since 1981, HLI has established a presence in over 50 countries, arming the people with the means necessary to preserve their pro-life ways.
The Holy Father, in his encyclical letter Evangelium Vitae, talks about a conspiracy against life. He uses that very term, a conspiracy against life, and he says it's an international conspiracy. He looks at organizations that are international, many powerful interests which have a lot of money and power behind them, and he sees how all these groups are gathering together, even national governments like our own, gathering together to bring population control to other nations, poorer nations that don't have as many resources as we do, to keep their fertility rates down and to keep their cultures under the thumb. And because of that conspiracy against life, HLI was created as a response to that, the holy opposition to that conspiracy against life. And so the urgency that we feel to come into these cultures and make them aware of the conspiracy against life is very potent, because when they understand what's upon them, they can do something about it.
But the battle is by no means easily fought. HLI is often a lone voice in a veritable wilderness of anti-life propaganda, crying out to the world that there is much to do and the need is urgent.
There's an urgent need to get the pro-life message out to other countries, most importantly because in many other countries, abortion is not yet legalized. Or if it is legalized, it's not as liberal as it is in the Western world, and in particular in the United States. So the urgency is to tell them what's coming. HLI's ministry and mission has always been to go to other places in the world which still have pro-life laws and pro-life cultures, and to raise the red flag, to train leaders and organize them and equip them and give them all the resources that they need to fight this before it comes into the culture. Because we always say that abortion is 1,000 times easier to stop from coming into your culture than it is to get out of the culture once it comes in.
The executive branch of the government, the Prime Minister and his or her staff, are the president.
Brian Close is a veteran in the war against abortion and has traveled extensively to spread HLI's message throughout the world.
I've traveled to, I believe, 26 countries now in the first 9 years. The first one is South Africa. I've been all over the world. And the reason I travel is because the United States and the developed countries have really fouled up the rest of the world with pushing abortion, population control, pornography, permissive sex education. And one of the things I'd like to do is help to defend against this kind of thing around the world, to show people how the developed countries are pushing this kind of evil off on them, to help them stiffen up their defense against it, to give them the backbone and the resources they need to fight against the culture of death all over the world. Many times they haven't heard the message of an American coming in to say, look, you've got to resist what's wrong. You've got to resist the evil coming out of the United States. You know, you can go ahead and eat the burgers and the Coke, and you can go ahead and wear the jeans, but the ideas are sometimes poisonous.
In recent years, the anti-life movement has concentrated its efforts on the traditionally pro-life Caribbean islands. Throughout the Caribbean, pro-abortion groups continually pressure the island governments into adopting laws promoting a secular society with a wanton disregard for human life.
The Caribbean cultures are very special and very close to my heart because they're so full of life. When you come down here to any of the Caribbean islands, you find that the people are so pro-life, they love their families, they love their church, and they're so full of faith. And unfortunately, they're not aware necessarily of the international conspiracy of organizations and nations that are trying to change their laws. So the beauty of our ministry to the Caribbean is that we come and make them aware of that. And when they are aware of the conspiracy against life, they are able to organize themselves, as they are doing right now in the Caribbean. They're able to get all the information that we can supply them, and they're able to get it out into the hands of people, and they're able to influence their culture.
In November of 2004, pro-life leaders from every major Caribbean island converged on Port of Spain, Trinidad's capital, for a conference launched in response to the growing tide of secularism and pro-death influence. Here on the island named for the Blessed Trinity, Human Life International rallies the people to a divine cause.
At this conference, we heard the testimony of a priest from the island of Dominica. And when the anti-life lobby, the family planners, went into that island in the 1980s, the first thing that they did was put up posters to try to get people hooked on contraception. And the poster that he quoted to us at this conference was something that was shocking to me. The poster said, "We have pest control, why not birth control?" And that incarnates the very logic of the anti-life lobby and the population controllers, that they consider the unborn child to be a pest, an inconvenience to a family, and they want to insert the birth control agenda into every single family on that island and in the whole Caribbean.
There is no greater example of a pro-life nation under attack than Trinidad itself. Even now, an influential organization is lobbying for the passage of a bill which aims to uproot Trinidad's pro-life culture in one devastating blow.
There's a group called Aspire in Trinidad and Tobago, and Aspire stands for Advocates for Safe Parenthood, Improving Reproductive Equity. So it sounds very, very noble. It is important to look at the title of what they're proposing. It's called Women's Choice on Pregnancy Bill. But it's very dangerous to have this being promoted as something that could become statute, could change our statute. Now, they're seeking in this to decriminalize abortion. The fact that you have evil going on in society, the fact that people still murder, people drive badly, etc., doesn't mean that as a society we should decriminalize murder. And this is what this group is seeking to do. So if you look at their document, Women's Choice on Pregnancy Bill, it's very interesting. You remember George Orwell wrote in 1984, in his book 1984, that some language is designed to make lies sound truthful and murder acceptable, and to give an appearance of solidity to pure wind. So if you read their preamble, for instance, it lulls you into a false sense of complacency. You know, they talk about, this is what they say, this law aims to enhance the dignity and sanctity of life. It anesthetizes part of your brain. And so you start thinking in the first 2 pages, this is wonderful, what they're proposing can't be all that bad. Until you turn the pages and realize what they're proposing is that minors, for instance, don't have to get consent. If you're under 18, you get pregnant, you don't need your parents' consent. Spouses, you don't have to ask your spouse or your partner for consent to have an abortion. In fact, what they're also proposing is that if you are a doctor and you refuse to abort the child, you could be fined or jailed. You know, there are many people in Guyana, St. Lucia, Barbados, where abortion is legal. None of them have ever seen a document that's so destructive. This little document, in fact, it encompasses the whole culture of death.